Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. So it is officially Q&A day. We surpassed 200 subscribers here on the channel and I couldn't be happier about it. We're a small channel and I love talking to every single one of you guys. So thank you for everyone who has subscribed and who's kept up with my videos, and a special thank you to everyone who submitted questions both here on YouTube, and I also did a request for questions over on my Instagram as well. If you don't follow me on Instagram, of course, I'll leave my handle down below and you guys can follow me over there. So I have a very large cup of hot cocoa. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if I'm coming down with something, but I have a little bit of a scratchy throat today. But I'm still going to answer these questions because I'm super excited that all of you have submitted questions, and they're really ones that make you think. So it's not questions like, you know, what's your favorite color? It's ones that I actually had to think about, and I really appreciate that. So jumping right in here, Priscilla Bettis asks, are you a writer or do you have any writing aspirations? And yes, I currently am not a published author. I do enjoy writing. I always really enjoyed writing, like creative writing and stuff like that when I was in school. I always wrote really creative stories. Most of them were spooky stories. Either they had to do with ghosts, or I wrote a lot of slasher stories, which is funny because I always joke that if I was a kid right now in 2021, they would probably bring me to a therapist with the type of stories that I was writing. So I've always enjoyed writing, and I really kind of fell out of it for that sort of 10-year slump that I was in. So that included reading and writing. So I had completely gotten out of it. But I've always been someone who's wanted to write novels or short stories or poetry or whatever, and it is one of my goals someday to become a published author. I just late last year wrote a short story that I was really proud of, and I'm also currently working on my novel. It is a fictional retelling of all of the spooky things that have happened in my family's life and right up through when I was growing up. But I would really like to someday publish that novel, and besides that, there's also other life experiences that I've had that I would like to put into a book because I think it can really help other people. So if you don't know, I have mentioned it here before on the channel, but I was in a not such a great marriage for 10 years, and I experienced a lot of emotional and mental abuse and daily put downs, gaslighting, all of that sort of thing. And after I got out of that marriage, which was a really big step, I went right into another situation that wasn't such a great situation. So fortunately, I'm in a much better place now, but I think kind of getting all of those emotions and my experience down into a book, I think can really help other people, because I know that there's other women out there that are in the same boat as me and they think it's never going to happen to them, or that they're not in a bad situation, but they know deep down that something isn't right. And so I would really like to write a book about that someday as well. So yeah, definitely I enjoy writing, and someday I hope to become a published author. And the lovely Merce from Harpies in the Trees submitted a question, and I do have a bunch of questions from other booktubers that were, you know, I'm so grateful that they participated in this, and I'll have all of their channels linked down below. So if there's someone on here that you are not following or who you'd like to check out, I'll have all of their channels linked in the description box. So Merce asks, have you ever been to a place that you felt you've been before? And I had to think about this, and I don't think so. I don't think there's ever been a place that I have been that kind of really felt like, okay, I've been here before. But I have met people. I think my intuition is more linked to people rather than places. And so there's definitely a connection between, like, I think I've met people, say, in a past life, or there's some sort of connection there. And actually back in 2019 I had a past life regression therapy session done where I was put under hypnosis and recounted past lives. And the hypnotist actually had a recorder, so even though I could only remember kind of little bits and pieces of what I was saying, it was all recorded and I could listen to it afterwards. And even though it is a really, really personal experience and a personal situation, there was something that came out of that that was uncanny in my life, and it's a big part of my life. So yeah, I'm total believer in reincarnation, and we can meet people and be in places and stuff like that in our past lives. And this situation that happened, like I said, it was really personal, so I don't want to go into it, but there's no way that that just came out of thin air. It was just kind of unbelievable. So that was a really cool experience to have. But thinking about places, I don't think there's a particular place that I've been that I was like, I've been here before. But that past life regression therapy session was a really, really cool experience for sure. So next, Alex from the Bookubus asks, what is one book that you don't think gets nearly enough attention and you think more people should check out? And this is actually a question that is asked by someone else later on, so I'll answer here and then I'll go back into it later on, because I do want to make sure that that person is called out. But I think I'm going to go with the Dream of Eagle series, which I just recently started to reread. And I had read the first 4 books, I believe, 3 or 4 books in the series about 10 years ago, and I was really enjoying it, but then I just kind of, I was in university and I kind of had to put all personal reading aside so I could finish my degree, and then I just kind of fell out of it. But honestly, this series is so good, and I think if Game of Thrones can get the kind of recognition that it got and the kind of love that it had, there's no reason that a Dream of Eagle series can't have the same sort of recognition. And it's a series that I really, really love, and it has to do with Roman Britain, and I have a degree in ancient and medieval history, and this will come up a little bit later as well. So it's right up my alley with, you know, historical fiction, but it's also a prequel to King Arthur and Camelot and all of that, and I love Arthurian legend, whether it's movies or books or whatever. It's just a really big love of mine, so I don't think a whole lot of people know about this series. So again, it's the Dream of Eagle series by Jack White, and he is a Scottish Canadian author, and I think it just really deserves a little bit more love. So next, Cameron Cheney asks, when did you realize you were a medium, and do you think your connection to the paranormal inspired your love for horror? And thinking back on it, the earliest kind of situation that I can remember, and this will come up again later in another question, I was only like, I had to have been about 3 or 4. Like, I wasn't in school. I was still staying at home, maybe in preschool, and I could see people in my house that weren't there, but they were solid, like they looked like you or I. And I remember they would hide and they would actually like, shh, like don't say anything kind of thing. And I didn't, like I never ever said anything. They didn't scare me. I saw them, like I said, like they were you or I, but I knew that nobody else could see them. And it's weird to kind of make that connection at such a young age. Like you would think that a child would say, hey, there's a girl hiding under the table. Or, you know, I would open up the window in the kitchen and there would be someone that was kind of underneath the window on the outside of the house. And I always kind of, like, that's the one that really sticks out in my mind. And I think I knew then that I could see things that other people couldn't see. And that was at a super young age. And then I found out after, and I've also mentioned this in the story that I did about the well that we found in the backyard, is that my mom always said that as soon as I was brought into the house was settled. And my family never experienced any more paranormal activity, but I did. And it's almost like I think the spirits knew that I could see them, so they kind of concentrated on me because, like I said, like I had that connection. So I think that's why it kind of focused in on me afterwards. So yeah, I was super young when I started having those experiences, and I knew right away that there was something kind of off, like nobody else could see these people but I could. And then it was just kind of solidified when my mom said that. When I was brought into the house was settled. And then for the second part of the question, yeah, I do think that my connection to the paranormal definitely kind of coincides with my love of horror, because my favorite type of horror is paranormal and supernatural horror that has to do with ghosts and spirits and hauntings and religious horror and all of that sort of thing. So that's really my niche. I really love it. And I also think that anybody who has that kind of connection to the spirit world kind of sees things a little bit differently, and they kind of, you know, they tend to be more interested in macabre sort of things. And people who have those interests, like, I'm often told that I'm morbid, or I'm a grim reaper, or what's wrong with you, and you know, why are you so obsessed with death? And I'm not at all, but I think I just kind of see things a little bit differently, and I see life a little bit differently than someone who is not open to those sorts of things. So who knows, if I didn't turn out to be a spirit medium, would I have an interest in horror? I'm not really sure, but yeah, I think there's definitely a connection there. So next up, Anna H asks, why did you decide to start a booktube channel? Which books impacted you most as a child? And my YouTube channel actually didn't start as a booktube channel. I was watching a lot of booktube and I was doing a lot of reading, but my channel actually started out more as a lifestyle type of channel and like a spooky alternative type of lifestyle channel. So I did a lot of Halloween decor hunting. Sorry if you can hear my dogs, they sound like elephants upstairs. So I was doing a lot of Halloween decor hunting and recipes and spooky things that I loved as a child and all of that. And I started incorporating some bookish content into, you know, amongst all of my other videos. And after a while, I kind of realized that all I wanted to do was talk about books. Those were the videos that I enjoyed the most. And when I actually looked at the analytics of the channel, those were the videos that were getting the most views. So I kind of just said, well, if this is what I love doing and this is what my viewers want to see, then there's no reason that I shouldn't just make it a primarily book channel. So I do still share other things, like we just had a show about podcasts. I did one on horror movie soundtracks, and I would like to do more sort of spooky movies and stuff like that as well as books. But that's kind of how it all started. So yeah, I started out wanting to do a lifestyle channel, and then it just sort of veered right off into doing just primarily books. And it was just what I really enjoyed doing, so that's the way I continued. And then for the second part of the question, what books most impacted you as a child? And I had to think about this one a little bit. But honestly, I have to say probably it was when I started reading Christopher Pike books. I had read the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark series, and I had read Goosebumps, but I think the difference with the Christopher Pike books was it also dealt with other things, other real life sort of situations. It deals with death and with relationships and, you know, other sorts of things like that. And when I was growing up, I was always a really big fan of shows like Degrassi and stuff like that. And so I like to learn about like real life situations. And there's a book that's very similar to the Midnight Club that's called Princes in Exile. And it's about a camp where kids go and they all have cancer. And I don't know, I just really kind of hooked into that sort of thing. So it had my love of everything spooky and, you know, ghosts and hauntings and slashers and all of that, but it also had like a real life element, and I think that really stuck with me as a kid. So yeah, I think I would have to say when I was reading the Christopher Pike books, it sticks out the most in my head for sure. And my good friend Steve from Steve Talks About Books and Stuff asks, what is your comfort movie? And there's nothing else I could have said but The Flight of Dragons. And it's so funny because no matter who I talk to about this movie, which is actually based on a book, no one else, I haven't found anybody else who's ever seen it. So please let me know down below if you know about this movie and you know what it's about. But this is a cartoon from the 70s, and it has to do with the fight between the world of magic and the world of science. And, you know, they're kind of clashing, and, you know, it kind of came about that the two can't exist simultaneously. They can't coexist. And there are 4 wizards who are brothers, but one of them is evil and he will not bow to science at all. He doesn't want to have anything to do with it. But the others are trying to figure out what they're going to do, and they come up with a quest. And so it's one of the wizards, Carolina's, his 2 dragons, and they actually bring a scientist from the 20th century back in time so they can go on a quest and figure out, you know, how to have these 2 coincide and go up against the evil wizard. And it's just absolutely fantastic. And I don't know why more people don't know about this movie / book. John Ritter is one of the voices, and James Earl Jones is one of the voices. And whenever I feel down or I'm just not feeling well, like right now I have a little bit of a sore throat, I'm feeling kind of oogie. So this is definitely the movie that I would go for. I've been watching it my whole life. I remember my parents had it taped on VHS when I was a kid, and somehow it got overwritten at one point. But then I found it on Amazon on DVD, and I watch it at least once a year. And I mean, it's got wizards, it's got dragons, it's got the damsel, it's the whole package. And it's just something that, it's not only nostalgic, but I just love the story and the deeper meaning that's in it. So yeah, that's definitely my comfort movie / book. So again, let me know down below if you know about this movie or if you would like to check it out, because this is another one that this story just doesn't get enough recognition. It's a fantastic story, and I would love to actually see it made into like a live action, like a modern day live action. But for right now, that 70s cartoon is definitely my comfort zone. I just absolutely love it. So the next question, Smiley Tanya asks, what is your favorite book, and is there a series that you enjoy that doesn't get enough recognition? So the second part of that question we already answered, so it's the Dream of Eagle series. But for the other part of the question, what is your favorite book? And I had to think about this because up until last year, my favorite book or series of all time has always been Harry Potter. And I still love Harry Potter, and I love the world, and I love the movies, and I love the writing. But when that whole thing happened with the author and her beliefs, it fell out of that spot of being my favorite book. And I'm not sure yet what I'm going to replace it with, because Harry Potter has always been such a huge part of my life for many years, and I actually read it during a really rough time, and it was one of those worlds that you could just sink into and forget reality, and you felt like you belonged, and you felt like you were really part of the story. And I'm going to speak about this a little bit more later on with another question. But yeah, I can't say Harry Potter is my favorite book anymore. But at this point, I'm just really not sure what's going to take over that spot. Maybe I'll find a new favorite book this year. And this question is kind of a continuation on the last one. And Adri Zumbi asks, if an author is very controversial in his or her life, will you separate art from the artist? Will you still read their work or shut it down? So this kind of is a continuation on my response from the last question, and you know, we need to talk about the author of the Harry Potter series. And when that whole thing came about, I kind of had to sit down and think, like, what am I going to do with this information? I am a 100% full supporter of trans rights and everyone's rights to live their life as they want to. This is a safe space on this channel, and I am a very strong ally to that. One of the beliefs in my path is that as you harm none, do what you will. So somebody wanting to live as a different gender or have a same-sex marriage or whatever the situation is, as long as they're not hurting anybody else, who am I to say that they shouldn't be living like that? So when all of this came out with such a famous author, you know, it really affected me, because I had this love of her series on the one hand, but on the other hand, you know, this came from her, but she has these awful beliefs. And when I was thinking about it, I had kind of made the decision that I'm no longer going to buy any Harry Potter merchandise, because I don't want my money to go to her anymore. But with what I have, maybe I can still enjoy it, because like I said, there are other actors and other players involved in the movies, and I still love the books. But I have to say, I haven't been able to watch the movies or read the books ever since that came out. So I made an attempt to separate it, but every time I think about it, that's all I can think about. So I think that's the best way I can answer that question. And the same thing came about with Marion Zimmer Bradley. I'm a huge lover of the Mists of Avalon. Again, it's a retelling of the Arthurian legend. And I actually didn't know about all of the controversy surrounding her until a couple of months ago, to tell you the truth. And again, even though she is now passed away, so like even if I buy her books or whatever, it's not going to go directly to her. But even still, my love for that movie and my love for the book, I can't watch or read it without having those things go through my mind, and that is a really terrible situation. I tried to do the whole separate art from the artist kind of thing, but it hasn't worked so far for me, I gotta say. So yeah, that's the best way I can answer that question, I think. So next up, Moonwitch's Lair asks, if you could meet 3 characters from any book, who would you meet and why? And normally, like I said, Harry Potter had always been my favorite book, so I would have picked the trio from the Harry Potter books, but I'm like, let's go another route. So I went ahead and picked the Spook, Tom Ward, and Alice from the Last Apprentice series. And I absolutely loved reading those books. I actually rebought them. I have most of the series here now, and I want to do a reread. And I picked the 3 of them because they go on such amazing adventures, and you know, they're trying to defeat witches and goblins and, you know, all of that sort of thing, and ghosts and everything like that. And the books also take place in a really olden days kind of time frame, so like there's no electricity or anything like that. So I think going on adventures with the Spook, Tom, and Alice, I think would be really, really fun, and you know, try to defeat some goblins and monsters. So yeah, I mean, who wouldn't love that? And the lovely Nikki from Dark Between Pages asked one that I really had to think about, I have to say. So the first part of the question is, dinner party of 5, dead or alive. Who are 5 authors you enjoy to have a feast with? So the first 2, and I'm grouping these together for a specific reason. So I picked Christopher Pike and Tim Burton. So Tim Burton you probably obviously know as the producer and director, but he is also an author, and he wrote my favorite book of poetry called The Melancholy Death of Oyster Boy and Other Stories, which I reread every year. And I would just love to pick their brains on how they came up with, you know, these concepts for their stories, and why do they love the dark and macabre. And you know, because I really think I'd have a connection with those 2 people, And yeah, I mean, just discuss everything under the sun that's spooky and kind of a little weird and kind of a little twisted. So I really like to meet those two. And I also put in Jack White, who is the Dream of Eagles author, because Jack White is Scottish Canadian, like I said, and the series revolves around Roman Britain. So I think I could really have a great historical conversation with him. Like I said before, my degree is in ancient and medieval history, which involves a lot of British, Roman, and Greek history. And I just really, really love to sit down and discuss Roman history with him. The next author I picked is Shel Silverstein. And if my mom is watching this, she'll know that that's no surprise. So Shel Silverstein, of course, wrote books like Where the Sidewalk Ends and The Light in the Attic. And I knew all of his poetry by heart when I was a kid, and even to this day I still remember a lot of it. I had both of those books on audiobook, and he would, you know, do the poetry and he would play his guitar and do funny voices and stuff like that. But what I find with his poetry is it has really has a deeper meaning. Like, some of the poetry is silly, it's kids poetry, but some of it, when you read between the lines, it really has these amazing messages. And this is another author and another set of books that I think had a big effect on me when I was a kid. I listened to that stuff over and over, and I mean, I grasped onto the lessons that were kind of in between the lines back then, and it's just as important now. So I would love to pick his brain on how he came up with all of that, and, you know, did it just kind of flow out as a kid's story and then it happened to have a deeper meaning? Or did he specifically put in there, and why he put those deeper meanings in there? Did he have life experiences with situations like that on his own? Or what was the reasoning why? So Shel Silverstein, definitely someone I would love to have dinner with. And the last person I picked was Gemma Hickey, and I mentioned Gemma's book a couple of videos back. It's called Almost Feral. And Gemma is a trans rights activist from my home province of Newfoundland, and they are also a survivor of clergy abuse. Gemma was abused at a very young age, and it was a horrible situation and something that she dealt with for many years, and the diocese and what they tried to do and all of that. But Gemma is probably the most positive person I have ever seen in my life. They don't let anything get them down. All of the hate that they receive, especially in such a small place like Newfoundland, like, I mean, we all know about small town mentalities and stuff like that. They just recently decided to run for office, and even when they lost their run for office, you know, they came out the very next day and talked about it's not about winning, and did, you know, a speech about it. And they're just an amazing person, and I would love to sit down and just have a conversation of what keeps them positive, what keeps them going, because I'm someone that struggles with that kind of stuff. And yeah, so I think that would be a fascinating conversation. And then the second part of Nikki's question was, what is one non-bookish item that you can't live without? And I don't know if I'm cheating here, but I picked my dogs, because my dogs are so therapeutic for me. Like, they're not a thing, but there's something in my life that I can't live without dogs. I love dogs, and they're such a, like I say, they're so therapeutic. And as someone who deals with mental illness, there's just something about, and they can sense when you're not yourself, or you're upset, or you're sad. You know, there's many nights when Dozer will come over and he'll just put his head in my lap, you know, and I'll just cry, and he'll just sit there with his head in my lap. Or my other dog, Callie, will curl right up by my head in bed. And I'm someone who deals with a lot of night terrors and nighttime hallucinations, and having my dogs there is like that security. So I just had to go ahead and pick my dogs. And the always lovely Nakia from Nakia's Hideaway asks, do you plan to monetize your channel or have future goals for your channel? And yes, when and if I do get to that point where I can monetize my channel, I would like to, just because I would like to build my Elizabeth Sagewood brand as kind of, my own entrepreneurial project. I do have a lot of aspirations that I would like to do. Like, I want to write books. I want to have a successful YouTube channel. I would like to start a podcast, which is something that I'm in the very, very, very beginnings of. And, why shouldn't I have that as a small business? I don't think I'll ever quit my full-time job because I have an amazing job and I love it. But yeah, I would love to start building my own brand, and if I can get paid for it, why not? So as for the second part, future goals for the channel. So I would like to keep mainly bookish videos on this channel. I would like to do some author interviews. I think that would be really cool, especially Canadian authors and indie authors. I would love to do that. And yeah, so I would really like to keep kind of going with the same kind of bookish content. I would like to do more reviews that are more theatrical with makeup or effects and stuff like that. I'm still, really learning all of this editing stuff and all of that. But I really enjoy, like when I did the review for Don't Call It All, which was my first ARC that I had ever received, and I put on my skeleton makeup and, distorted my voice and the whole thing. And I would like to do more of that sort of stuff. I would like to do more theatrics and editing to make things a little bit interesting and to make it dark and macabre. So yeah, so definitely some author interviews, a little bit more theatrics. But on top of that, one thing that I think I would really like to do, and I don't know if I would keep it on this channel or move it to a second channel, of course it would depend on what the viewers would want, but I would like to do, some more paranormal videos. For example, I would like to go to the Fairmont Banff Hotel, which is called the Castle in the Mountains. It's just an hour and a half from here, and it's one of the most famous haunted places in Canada. And I would love to tell the stories about the hotel and stay there and have experiences myself, or go to Edmonton and do the same thing, or even travel like back to Newfoundland to do the same thing. So I would really like to do on-site sort of ghost story videos, or just telling fables and legends and ghost stories from Canada. So like I said, I would like to do more of those types of videos as well, and whether I keep that on this channel or move it to another one, I haven't really decided, but that is definitely something I've been thinking about doing. So let me know down below if you would like to see something like that. And then over on Instagram, I got a couple of questions as well. So Esoteric Order of Readers asks, how many books do you own? And how do you keep informed about new releases? So right now I just have the books that are on these shelves. I did a rough count, so it's about 300 right now. I did own a lot more books, like a lot. I've always been a reader. I always kept my books. And this is something else that I've mentioned on the channel before, but I'll just go over it quickly again, that in 2017, after being in a decade-long reading slump, I sold or gave away all of my books. Just about all of my books. I kept a couple, but I had gotten rid of most of them. And it's something that I really, really regret. But at the time, unfortunately, I had decided that I didn't want to be alive anymore, and I had a plan to end my life. So I think because of the depression that I was in and because of what I was going through, I was preparing for that, and I was getting rid of everything that didn't bring me joy anymore. But unfortunately, nothing brought me joy at that time. So that is definitely a dark spot in my life. It had an effect on everything, and unfortunately I can't get those books back. But I have started building up my collection again, and I'm in a really, really great place now. So yeah, we'll get this. I would like to have actually this entire space down here. I'm in my basement. I would like to have this entire space lined with bookshelves and just fill it up with old books. And then for the second part of the question, how do you keep informed about new releases? And I watch a lot of booktube for one, but outside of booktube I do a lot of research just looking at people's bookish vlogs. I follow some publishers on Instagram. I will go into publishers' websites and just kind of see what they have upcoming. For example, there's, like, if I'm looking for YA thrillers, there's a site for Fire Reads Midnight, so I will go in and see what they have upcoming for a year or whatever. So I look for that. I follow authors, I follow publishers, and yeah, so I'll just jot things down or take a quick screen capture and then, you know, build out my lists from there. And my good friend Creeps and Ghouls asks, what was your very first supernatural experience? So going back to the other answer that I gave on, you know, when did I realize I was a medium, it was definitely seeing people in my house that weren't there. And like I said, they look like you or I. I realized at a young age that nobody else could see these people, only I could see them. And I think they wanted it that way. And yeah, so that's the earliest thing I can remember. And then besides that, I remember being very young and there was something under my bed. I remember lying in my bed on, you know, more than one occasion when it would feel like somebody was, you know, putting a fist up through my mattress or shaking or whatever. And let me tell you, on those nights, you would jump as far as you could across the room before you hit the ground running and get out of the room. So that's something that really sticks out in my mind as well. And then our last question, Willow of Words asks, do you think old souls can relate a lot to the paranormal or are intuitive? And yeah, that ties into some of the other answers I gave as well, definitely. Anybody who has probably been around a few times, I think they're a little bit more open to things. I think they have a little bit more intuition than a lot of people who are younger souls. And besides that, even going back to the fact that my mom wasn't even supposed to have me. It was a miracle she got pregnant in the first place, and then she was told that I was never going to come to term and I was never going to live outside of the womb. And so I think all of that, and just, you know, that sort of thing, like if somebody has that sort of past with they're not supposed to be here, you were never supposed to have been born, that sort of experience I think ties in with this as well. So if you believe in reincarnation, which I 100% do, old souls can definitely be more open to that, and I think anybody who has been close to death can be more open to that. And that is like 100% what I believe. So there you guys go. That was our 200 subscriber Q&A. Thank you for everyone who took part and everyone who watches and has subscribed to the channel. It's bigger than I ever thought it could be, and hopefully our little family will continue to grow. So again, everyone who has asked a question, who has a booktube channel, I'll have that link down below. And also make sure to give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment or a question down below, because you guys know I love talking to you. But until next time, everybody, stay spooky. Bye.